Buenas tardes, les damos la más cordial bienvenida desde el Vicerrectorado de Investigación de nuestra universidad en este encuentro anual de investigación, innovación y creación PUCP 2021. Antes de empezar la sesión y la charla magistral de hoy, quiero recordarles, amigas y amigos, que pueden elegir el idioma en que escucharán la presentación del doctor Papalambros. Pueden ver en la parte inferior de su pantalla, en el lado derecho, antes del icono de reacciones, en la palabra interpretación, y si hacen clic allí, podrán elegir el idioma en el cual escucharán la presentación. Si quieren escucharla en inglés, hacen clic en inglés. Si quieren escucharla en español, hacen clic en español, y así seleccionan el idioma del canal de audio. Pueden hacerlo esto para estar más cómodas y cómodos siguiendo esta sesión que es muy especial. Vamos a empezar de inmediato con esta charla magistral que hoy nos convoca en nuestro encuentro anual de investigación, innovación y creación PUCP 2021 que organiza nuestro Vicerrectorado de Investigación. La charla tiene un título muy motivador: ¿Cómo hacen innovación las universidades? Además, tendremos un lanzamiento de un programa de entrenamiento en innovación. Quiero entonces presentar a nuestros ilustres participantes de la sesión. En primer lugar, le damos la más calurosa bienvenida a Perú al doctor Panos Papalambros, que tendrá a cargo la charla magistral. Se trata de un académico con una vasta trayectoria llena de distinciones. Por ejemplo, es James B. Angel Distinguished University Professor. También tiene como distinción el Donald Graham Professor of Engineering. Es profesor de Ingeniería Mecánica, Arquitectura y Planeamiento Urbano, Arte y Diseño en la Universidad de Michigan. Él conduce investigaciones en ciencia del diseño, que es el tema central con el cual hoy nos enseñará muchísimo. También es un especialista en optimización en el diseño de sistemas, con aplicaciones a sistemas automotrices y productos sostenibles, entre otras. Él es graduado de la Universidad de Stanford y de la Universidad Nacional Técnica de Atenas. Es coautor, además, del libro de texto Principles of Optimal Design, Modeling and Computation, y entre los muchos roles relevantes que ha desempeñado y desempeña, se encuentra el de Past Chief Editor de la revista ASME Journal of Mechanical Design, y actualmente es también Editor-in-Chief de la revista Design Science, que es el tema central de esta sesión. Así que le damos la más calurosa bienvenida y saludo al doctor Panos. Es un honor contar con su presencia y lo invitamos a realizar su presentación. A continuación, tendremos también la participación de David Santos Llave. Él es nuestro jefe de innovación en la Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú. David ha lanzado más de 14 productos y servicios al mercado. Ha participado en más de 50 proyectos de mejora continua e innovación con más de 32 empresas. Tiene estudios de maestría en Design Science también en la Universidad de Michigan y en Gestión de la Innovación y Tecnología por la PUCP. Además de estudios de posgrado en Innovación y Emprendimiento en MIT y en Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India. Así que tenemos una sesión muy grata, muy provechosa para todas y todos, y por tanto, ahora sí, damos el uso de la palabra al doctor Panos Papalambros. Bienvenido a Perú, Panos. Lo escuchamos con atención.
Thank you, Edmundo. I'm very happy to be with you this evening. I will stay with you for an hour until we can all go and enjoy the weekend. But thank you again for the opportunity to talk with you. I will share my screen and hopefully this will work. Right. So, cómo las universidades en el mundo fomentar la innovación en sus ecosistemas. This is an interesting title. What I thought I'll try to do is go and see why you're asking me to talk about this. So I went to the website of your university and I asked the question, what does innovation fit into this vision? I'm sure you know the vision by heart, so I will not read it. But let me just say that to answer that question, we will look at a few things. Para responder, que la miraremos. What innovation means in an academic setting, a design mindset as a path to innovation, and a little bit at the end about design education as academic innovation. So, what does innovation mean in an academic setting? Well, we'll go to the dictionary. What is innovation? Innovation is a new idea, a new device, a new method. Or innovation is the act or process of introducing new ideas, devices, or methods. Okay, I think that's kind of obvious. But let's see a little bit some history on this. And it turns out, if you look back far enough, you see that innovation is largely an economic concept. This is a quote from Joseph Schumpeter, who was an Austrian economist, eventually made it to the US. La innovación es posible sin nada que debamos identificar como invención. An invention does not necessarily induce innovation. but produces of itself no economic relevant effect at all. And this is really important because frequently we confuse getting a good idea or a new theory in science, inventing, with innovation. So innovation always has this economic component to it. In fact, Schumpeter goes further and suggests that there is even a mathematical concept in innovation. We define innovation more rigorously by means of a production function. This function describes the way in which a quantity of products varies if the quantity of factors vary. But if instead of quantities of factors, we vary the form of the function, then we have innovation. So in the sort of systems thinking, you have a system that performs a function, and you have an input of factors, and you have an output. And if you just have X, you change X, and you get different Ys, that's fine, but that's not innovation. Innovation is when you change the F. So that's kind of interesting. Now then I thought, okay, let's see what the popular press says. And I don't know how it is in Peru, but in the US, our universities seem to live and die by this US News and World Report rankings, which frankly are kind of silly, in my opinion, because the US News and Report magazine died many years ago, and the only thing I'd left was these rankings. So you take them as they come. So it turns out that every year, this is this year's rankings of the most innovative schools in the United States. And the first one is Arizona State, and then you start looking Georgia State and so forth. When I looked at this, I hadn't looked at this. I actually went to see this because of this talk. And I have to say that I had never heard of Ellen University before. And now I'm going to have to call my president and tell him that he has a problem because Ellen University is better than Michigan. Anyway, you can see there's some well-known names and then some not so well-known names. And it's una bolsa mixta, right? Mixed bag. Okay, well, that's the US side. Let's see something more serious like Reuters. And they're doing a ranking of the most innovative universities in the world. And that's the 2019 ranking. So these are the top 10, according to them. And I thought it's interesting because now, yeah, I know all these schools. I've been to most of them. And yeah, they're pretty innovative. Then I also looked to see how they are doing this. And in fact, one of the things that was interesting is the number of universities in the Reuters top 100 by country. And interestingly, the US is pretty high here by a long shot. And then you can see the other countries. I hope you can see these numbers here. So actually, it's pretty good that a little country like Denmark is doing pretty well, actually, for its size. Okay, that was very interesting. So then the question is, okay, how did they do this? What are the attributes of innovative schools, right? What makes a school innovative? So I looked at the methodology that the US News rankings say they use. And sure enough, what they do is they ask people like the president of the university, provosts, senior administrators, deans, to just give them a list of the 15 most innovative schools. And they say, do this in terms of curriculum, faculty, like professors, students, campus life, technology, or facilities. So any of those. The Reuters is also very interesting. This is the numbers actually for the top school, which I think it was Stanford. So what they do is they just count the total patents that have been filed. And then they count the success rate, that is from all the patents filed, what percent is actually approved by the patent office. And then they have another score, they call it the commercial impact score. And they do this by measuring things like how many academic papers have been cited in patent applications. So this is really scientific, right? Because it uses numbers. The other one is sort of opinions. I'm actually a little bit joking here because I find both of these quite interesting, and we can have a discussion how much you trust this, but this is what we use. At least that's what people who are interested in this will go and see. So I looked a little bit more and I said, okay, why is the Arizona State University #1 in innovation in the US? And I went to their website, and sure enough, they have exactly this from their website, and they asked that question for themselves and they answer it. And they say that we are #1, better than MIT and Stanford, because trabajamos arduamente. Okay, you can read this. And if you read this, you realize that it's really about the students. It's what they do for the students. And a little bit at the end, they also talk about technology and research and funding. But the key thing they emphasize is the students, what they do for the students. Now, there's another fellow, an economist, that was writing actually in the 19th century, and he brought up an interesting point. Mind you, this Thorstein Veblen, he was a Norwegian American, and I think in today's jargon, we would call him a leftist. So he claimed that the innovation benefits for true innovation must be collective, must be social. And so he said that the motive principle and aim of innovation is no doubt the higher efficiency of the improved and more elaborate products for personal comfort and well-being. But then he goes on to argue that the ruling class, la clase dominante, está en contra de la innovación, ya que busca preservar su dominio sobre el status quo, por la que la verdadera innovación ocurre cuando las mejores resultantes se relacionan con las necesidades de la sociedad. So, if they don't relate to the needs of society, that's not really true innovation. Now, in part, he was thinking about social innovation, but maybe we should think about this in the general term of innovation. That's another opinion. So what's my take on all this? Well, as far as innovation in research for the university, basically what that means is we should conduct what we call in the US translational research, which can be turned into patents, startups, and eventually money for the university and its constituents. Could be the professors, the students, the graduates. In terms of innovation in education, it's really about providing lots of student experiences that are what we call co-curricular, extracurricular, community-related, beyond the classroom, beyond traditional lecturing. So this is what the current sort of, in my opinion, sort of thinking is. It's maybe slightly cynical, but I think it's also pragmatic in that universities certainly in the US have become a lot more dependent on support from non-traditional sources like the governments, whether state or federal, and they look for a lot more sources of support from the private sector. So a lot of that is driven in terms of innovation research, but the need for, frankly, more resources coming out of the university, and also the impression that the university actually provides social value. The other thing in education is that there's a clear sort of acceptance now that just the professor sitting in front of you, like I'm doing right now and talking, is just not enough. So we should be doing more. Okay, so let's think about what we might be doing a bit more. So I suggest that a mindset, the way we think about designing things, is a path to innovation. And so what I'd like you to do is help me to talk about this. So wherever you are, you can either have like piece of paper if you're really traditional. I'm serious, please do it. If you are innovative, you could maybe get your cell phone or something. So please do me a big favor, and let's spend, I would say, maybe no more than 10 minutes to go through this. Okay, 5, 7. We'll do it quickly, but I want you to try to work through this with me, okay? So humor me. Okay, so we want to design a bird's nest. So the first question I would like you to think about is, what is the design problem? I'm asking you to design a bird's nest. What's the design problem? Like what bird, why, where? And like write one sentence of your problem statement. Spanish is fine. But remember, you are the bird. You're not designing for the bird, you are the bird. Okay. Edmundo, so we'll give him like 2 or 3 minutes. 2 minutes. Is that okay? Okay, maybe I'll do something while you're thinking. Help you with your thinking. Okay, keep writing, and now I'm gonna move to the next point. Just out of curiosity, you can check to see what you've written, but the expert, and I got this from a website that is providing expert advice on natural things. The expert says that all nests serve the same purpose: protect eggs and hatchlings, little birds. In some cases, the nests also help attract mates. Okay, good. Let's do the next one now. If you are building a good nest for you to do this, to solve this problem, what properties should this nest have? So please make a list. Should have at least 3. And you're the bird. Okay, let's see what the experts say. Well, there are three basic properties. One is cushioning, making sure the eggs don't break, so you put soft stuff. And also protecting the eggs when the father bird or mother bird, are going around stepping everywhere. Also to have flexibility, so as the little hatchling birds grow, they can still hold them in. So cushioning is one. The second one is shelter. So may have some roofs of overhangs, keep them out of wind, rain, and sun. And the third one is camouflage. Hide the nest from predators, from other birds usually, and animals who may go and eat them. So they actually use materials to decorate and sort of make it look like something else. You can compare these answers to yours, see how well you're doing. Okay, now the hard part. So you know what problem you want to solve. You have some properties that a good solution should have. Okay, what would these solutions be? So can you sketch? Really, you don't have to be a painter. Just sketch something that communicates your idea of how the nest would look like. And I'd like it to do 3 different alternatives. All right, so I'll give you a little more time on this. Okay, 30 seconds. All right, you can keep working. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you a little bit of what the competition is doing. So I'll just show you some pictures and let the music go so I don't talk too much. So I'm sure you will recognize some of your own concepts among the competition. And so then the question is, okay, you got these concepts, but now you want to make them real. In design jargon, we call this embodiment. Okay, so how do you make sure that this really works, that it actually solves the problem? It turns out that this is a serious question. You know, people have written books. Wikipedia has articles on it. They've written scientific papers. As you can imagine, there's quite a lot of discussion from an engineering perspective about the construction, the architecture of it, the materials you use, and so forth, even dynamic analysis. So anyway, lots of interesting science behind this from our side, not from the birds. Okay, so at the end then, we have this question of how do we verify that there's a good nest? How do we know that this nest really works that has the attributes that we talked about? And remember, a good nest is probably a nest that deals with things like construction, protection, sanitation. This is important. Keep the nest clean. That was interesting. I didn't know about this when I was thinking inquilline hosting. This is the ability of the nest to actually hold other organisms that actually help clean up the nest. And then how you go in and out, camouflage, and so forth. Okay, the question is, how do you verify that the nest actually does this over a period of time? Okay, one can argue that if the nest didn't do a good job, the birds won't be around anymore, if you believe in Darwin, right? But this verification is a big problem when we design. It's not that simple, right? To go in and prove that in a real life situation, the design that you haven't built yet is actually going to satisfy the needs of the problem that you start with. So it's a really hard problem. So the summary of what we went through is these 5 steps. What is the problem? What properties, the design attributes, should the problem have, should the solution have to address the problem? Then we went through a sort of a divergence of thinking different alternatives that might solve this problem. And keeping these properties in mind, we select one as the best one to go into embodiment, right, to make it real. And the question is, how do you do that? Because there are many different alternatives that you have to embody something that is a single concept, like with many embodiments. And then how you verify that you have a good nest. So actually, you just went through a quick design experience. And this is a simple but very common, I would say, way of thinking about design as having the steps of defining what the problem is and solution attributes, expand, diverge by generating many solutions, reflect on how your solutions, potential solutions, meet these attributes of the solution for the problem, then make the selection, do the embodiment, and then build and validate. And the key thing, of course, is to realize that each of these and all of them together require iteration. The idea that you get it right the first time, as some companies advertise, is just not happening. It never happens. You always iterate. And it's really an important principle in the design mindset, is that since you iterate, the assumption is that you fail. So failure is okay. You do it early, you recover. So that's an important part of the design thinking. And this is also why it's important also for innovation. So the key takeaways from this, from my perspective, is that el diseño genera valor. Design generates value, is value to somebody. It could be you because you make money out of it. It could be you are investor in your idea. Hopefully, it will be whoever you design for, your customers, your clients, your beneficiaries, right? Who, through your design, solve their problem, meet their need, okay? So there's value involved. Designing has structure. So many times designing seems to be chaotic, but in fact, there is a structure. Because there's many iterations and because you make decisions about the future, which you don't know, and you may have to revisit them, there's a sense that designing is chaotic. Yeah, it is, but there is structure in it. Design requires iteration. We talked about this. Very important. Design expresses your personal values. El diseño expresa tus valores personales. You cannot design without expressing your personal values. Even if you say that you don't, because you have a boss that tells you what to do, that's still a personal value. And so design is an innovation process. So the innovation process also carries your personal values. So let us sort of move to the last piece of design education as academic innovation. So I looked at the website of the University of Michigan. We actually have a Center for Academic Innovation. And I knew about it, and frankly, I didn't visit it very often, but I did go to look at it for our talk. And it has very sort of predictable things. It says we're designing, it's interesting that it says we're designing the future of learning through research innovation. That's actually circular. Experimentation and iteration. They have all the right words, actually, in my opinion. They don't use the word design, but forget about design and just think about innovation and just think it's the same thing, at least from my perspective. And then, if you look more closely, you see that it talks a lot about the student opportunities. Okay. All right. So let me just, I was thinking about this talk yesterday, and yesterday in my design class that David is familiar with, we had a design milestone. So I took these clumsy videos, okay, just for you. So I didn't even tell the students, so I know you're recording this, but don't show this to the world more than that. So anyway, here it is. There was a group, and their title of the project is Shake the Stress. So the problem is that young professionals, well, let me just play this. Can you hear the sound? Can you hear it?
Our statement has remained largely unchanged.
Yes.
And helping young professionals manage stress in high-stakes environments. Right now, though, I'll discuss a slightly updated, more specific user scenario that relates to some of our concepts that we'll go through later on. So Allison is a consultant, and she's presenting her findings to an important business client. She's reviewed the message she wants to send, but when it comes time to present, she can feel her body and mind tense up. She ends up rushing through the content, and the client cannot keep up with her line of thinking, resulting in confusion and skepticism. So how do we reduce Allison's stress and physical byproducts of her nerves in these situations? I'll hand it over to Patrick to talk about our attributes.
Thank you. So here are design attributes, and these design attributes are from our survey from the Max Tips question. And we asked survey takers what's the most important product attribute for winner product and what's the least.
So they describe how they collected information. And basically, among other things, they came up with these design attributes I mentioned earlier, but they actually do some quite, I would say, professional surveying and using, mathematical models out of primarily marketing to evaluate the survey results and rank the different attributes in terms of importance for the users. So let's see what this guy has to say.
So really talking to that daily stress environment, something like this is a great scenario. I'm starting to talk fast. Wow, this is a big room. Oh my God, I didn't go to the bathroom before this. I'm starting to fidget like whatever. This is exactly where this would come into play. It would let you know what filler words you're using, how fast, and give you some calming devices, kind of like a fuzzy thing you can touch. We're in virtual, so you can do that below the table, or you can do that behind your back as you're presenting to the group.
So I don't know what they're going to come up with, but the point is that they are following the process and they're getting lots of experience thinking about a problem, the needs of the people who have this problem, and how they might actually address these needs. So going back to our original statement, where does innovation fit into this vision of your university? Now I have the vision in Spanish, so that reminds you, those of you who probably never read it, if you're like me. So this is the vision. And I think that actually innovation has quite a good place in this. We talked about innovation academic setting, and the primary sort of places is in research that's relevant and provides value to society, and in education, in getting the students to think beyond being sort of passive recipients of the knowledge that we throw at them as professors. The second thing that I talked about is that a design mindset is a path to innovation. And I hope that I was able to give you a little bit of a sense of why I make this claim. And then finally, I gave you just a quick example of design education as academic innovation. And what I'd like to do actually at this point is ask David to step in and say something about what you guys are planning to do about academic innovation. So from me, muchas gracias. These are my students having fun. So David, your turn.
Gracias, Pando. Ver esos videos me ha hecho recordar cuando llevaba clases contigo. Quería contarles un poco cómo estamos utilizando, introduciendo estos conceptos de ciencia del diseño en la universidad, y les quería contar un caso muy rápido, que es el rediseño de nuestra oficina de innovación que está dentro de la Dirección de Fomento de Investigación en el Vicerrectorado de Investigación. Y en esta oficina yo ingresé hace unos 6 meses aproximadamente, y lo que primero hice fue definir cuál es el desafío, ¿no? ¿Cuál es el problema? Y ahí venía una serie de preguntas sobre qué es la oficina, qué hace, cuál es el valor que aporta, que debería aportar, cuál es el valor percibido de los demás, una serie de interrogantes de cómo nos ven desde adentro, cómo nos ven desde afuera, cómo nos conectamos con los docentes, cómo nos conectamos con el personal administrativo, con los alumnos, cómo se generan estas sinergias, cómo aportamos al ecosistema, cómo está el ecosistema de innovación de la universidad. Y una serie de dudas que yo tenía, y dentro de este análisis de entender el problema, utilicé varios recursos. Entre las principales fue entrevistar entrevisté con más de medio centenar de personas para entender estas preguntas y no poner mi sesgo cognitivo de mi visión, sino cuál es la realidad, qué es lo que los otros están viendo de esta oficina. Y en ese proceso aparecieron muchos insights y también muchos atributos que debería tener la oficina en su propuesta de valor. Y con esos atributos, con mi equipo, empezamos a diseñar y a entender cuáles eran las cosas que deberíamos hacer y qué cosas deberíamos dejar de lado por ahora y qué cosas deberíamos tomar como nuevas. Y ahí empezamos a definir y a escoger, y a priorizar cuál de los temas íbamos a tomar, a empezar a sacar ideas de cuál sería la mejor opción, probar, diseñar prototipos y finalmente ir avanzando en esos prototipos y tener prototipos de mayor resolución, validando también qué es lo que nos decían nuestros stakeholders y finalmente sacando pequeños MVPs o productos mínimos viables para ir testeando. Este proceso de diseño lo hemos incorporado en el rediseño de la Oficina de Innovación. Actualmente tenemos el primer CAP de innovación que nace bajo esta idea. Estamos lanzando un programa de entrenamiento, también innovación. Va a salir el próximo mes, luego le voy a contar un poquito sobre esto. Entrenamientos para los ganadores del CAP de innovación y también ayudando a que nuestro ecosistema empiece a conectarse con las unidades que trabajan en la universidad que ven innovación. Estamos tratando de ser este puente para unirnos entre todos y tener una mirada única de innovación hacia el entorno y también vincularnos con la industria, con las empresas y tener hemos rediseñado una propuesta de valor escuchando a las empresas y diseñando en base a los requerimientos que las empresas necesitan en este momento, en esta época. Y ahora estamos validando esa hipótesis y vamos a seguir afinando hasta que tengamos mejores prototipos y podamos tener una propuesta de valor clara ante la sociedad y darle el valor o brindar todo este valor que la universidad tiene hacia afuera y mostrarlo. Este es el proceso que estamos siguiendo, que es tal cual el que menciona Panos, y que no solamente nosotros lo estamos usando, sino en la universidad hay muchas áreas también que lo están usando por las reuniones que he tenido, y eso a mí me entusiasma mucho, porque uno de los objetivos que tenemos es tener una metodología única, PUC, de innovación, una metodología, yo le llamo PUC Design, que nos permita trabajar en conjunto, no importa si yo vengo de ingeniería y viene alumno de derecho y viene un alumno de educación o viene otro alumno de gastronomía, todos manejamos el mismo idioma, que es el diseño, para poder enfrentar o entender los problemas y poder diseñar soluciones. Y ese es un poco el sueño hacia donde estamos trabajando el próximo año. Y quería aprovechar también para comentarles sobre este plan de entrenamiento que estamos lanzando. El próximo año estamos diseñando una experiencia de aprendizaje para poder introducir la innovación como forma de pensar, en base a competencias y también con frameworks o metodologías de respaldo que nos permitan enfocar las cosas distinto, cambiar la forma en que solucionamos los problemas normalmente y crear comunidades. Este proceso entendemos que es un cambio, es un proceso de gestión del cambio, es una transición, son cambios de hábitos y por lo tanto requiere tiempo y nosotros estamos diseñando todo este proceso que dé el soporte para que este cambio y esta transición sea posible. En el CAP de innovación que hemos lanzado, el primer concurso de innovación de la universidad, en base a las postulaciones, hemos entendido un poco la necesidad de la universidad de estas iniciativas. Ya hay 16 ganadores que van a empezar un programa de entrenamiento en las próximas 3 semanas, van a estar acompañados durante casi un año para poder pulir las ideas, validar, iterar, equivocarse rápido y barato y poder ir mejorando sus productos. Y queremos llevar este mismo entrenamiento, este mismo mindset y conjunto de competencias a toda la comunidad PUC. Y en eso estamos, y para poder hacerlo, no lo vamos a poder hacer solamente nosotros creamos las condiciones, pero son ustedes los que hacen esto posible. Como bien dice Panos, el corazón de la universidad son los estudiantes, los docentes, el equipo administrativo, todos nosotros estamos involucrados en el crecimiento de la universidad, y nuestro país y Latinoamérica y el planeta necesita que podamos aportar con soluciones. Estamos en un momento único en la humanidad, creo, en nuestro país también, y la universidad también está pasando un momento inédito que debemos aprovechar para poder potenciar la innovación y seguir creciendo como universidad. Y eso es un poco lo que les quería comentar. Estén atentos a las comunicaciones del vicerrectorado, del BRI. Vamos a comentarles sobre estos entrenamientos para que puedan participar también. Y eso es todo por mi lado. Bueno, el mundo, creo que pasamos ahora a las preguntas.
Sí, hay preguntas que puedan o deseen realizar en el chat.
There were a couple of them I answered in the chat. I did answer a couple of them in the chat.
Efectivamente, gracias, Panos. Quiero, si no hay más preguntas, destacar lo valioso del enfoque que trae Panos, la importancia de iterar, la importancia también de considerar, como ha reseñado David, la diversidad de saberes, de disciplinas que tenemos en la universidad, la riqueza de la diversidad de nuestros alumnos y nuestros profesores y profesoras es sin duda un activo por poner en valor de manera colaborativa y con esa mente puesta en las necesidades de los demás, en las necesidades de la sociedad, en los problemas de la sociedad y en poder testear las soluciones a esos problemas, aquellas que con esta cultura del diseño, ciencia del diseño, hasta arte, le podríamos llamar, pueden efectivamente funcionar y seguir siempre mejorando, estando al día con estas necesidades que deben surgir entonces de un diálogo entre nuestras disciplinas y también de una comunicación y de iteración con la comunidad que se encuentra fuera de la universidad para agregar valor y realizar un aporte más efectivo al país. Quiero de esta manera agradecer muy especialmente a David, al doctor Panos Papalambros, por el aporte que han realizado el día de hoy, invitarlos a continuar con las actividades de nuestro encuentro anual de investigación, innovación y creación, desearles que sigan cuidándose mucho, que estén disfrutando del mayor bienestar posible. Muy buenas tardes y hasta pronto.
Okay, thank you. Are we live still? So
Yes.
I guess, I don't know what's the time. If we have more time for any more questions. One thing I wanted to mention, listening to Edmundo's points, is that maybe there is a little bit of a lesson from sort of the design process in the innovation process. And two things that come to mind are the iteration that I mentioned. So you're not going to get it right the first time, but you will learn. And you will learn only if you actually listen to those that you try to reach, right? So we've talked before with David. What is the look of success? How would you know this journey that you're starting to bring more, let's say, innovation to your institution? How would you know success? Will you go with Reuters? Are you going to start counting patents? I mean, it's a serious question. Would you look to see if your students, as they graduate, they feel more empowered, more ready to address social problems instead of just getting a job, which is very important for many of them, because particularly in engineering, a lot of students come because they need to support families. They need, you know, the burden of living is important, right? And so having a job, but is the goal of the education they get to go get a job with a good salary, which most engineers actually manage in most countries, or is it something more? And is that something more part of what you're trying to do in an innovative education? So anyway, these are my thoughts, and good luck. I think you have a good goal.
Muchas gracias. Nuevamente, Panos, y espero que haya sido muy provechosa esta sesión, que estén muy, muy bien. Muy buenas tardes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm leaving now.
Thank you so much, Panos.
Okay, take care.
Take care.
Bye,
See
bye,
you.
bye.
Thank you very much,
Let's talk
Panos.
later.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Have a good
Hopefully,
time.
I will hope to see you if everything works out. I hope to be in Lima next March.
Yeah.
Great.
So I talked to
Sure.
David. So we'll see if COVID and everything else allows us. Maybe we can plan something to follow up on this.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So
Okay.
take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.